LeBron James is a 3-time NBA champion, a 3-time Finals MVP, a 4-time MVP, multiple-time All-Star, and will go down without a doubt as one of the greatest players to ever touch a basketball. But I am here to tell you this. There is one thing that is missing from his career that he has struggled in heavily, or at least it has prevented him from reaching the GOAT, and I personally think if you remove this and just give him something decent in this category, that he could have became the GOAT. And yes, I am talking about the organization, because for LeBron James' career, he has played 7 years of his career in Cleveland from 2003 to 2010, and in that span of 7 years, it was one of the worst years that any superstar can have. I mean, let's just look at this. You have the teammates that he played with in Ilgauskas and Carlos Boozer and Varejao, who were no doubt, without question, the best players that he played with. Yes, I know he had Mo Williams for about a year or two, but we all know how that happened. Let's just be honest. I know people say Mo Williams was an all-star, but around that time, Jameer Nelson was an all-star, and they basically just took the 2 best players on the 2 best teams in the East, and they just put them on the all-star team. Let's just be honest. If Jameer Nelson can make the all-star team, Mo Williams definitely is going to make the all-star team. And also, when we look at the fact that the management that LeBron James was surrounded with, Jesus Christ, it was horrible. I mean, let's look at the Amari Stoudemire situation. You have a trade that basically is J.J. Hickson for Amari Stoudemire, and I guarantee you could have let him stay because I know he didn't have much time left on his contract. But I'm sure LeBron taking him to the finals, because yes, they could have gone to the finals if you can get to the Eastern Conference semifinals, or get to the Eastern Conference finals and lose to the Magic, or get to the finals and lose to the Spurs, and on your way there LeBron James does his thing against the Pistons. I'm pretty sure that's enough to make Amari Stoudemire stay in Cleveland for a few more seasons and give productive years to where you could build a possible championship team with Amari and LeBron. But no, Dan Gilbert decided to decline the trade and trade J.J. Hickson a year later. I mean, come on, man. It just gets to the point where the management around LeBron James was horrible. It was bad. I mean, when you have Delonte West, you also have Daniel Gibson, Larry Hughes barely stayed on the court, and when he was on the court, he wasn't really that efficient. And I understand that he played with Ben Wallace and he played with Shaq, but let's just be honest here. Ben Wallace and Shaq, they were way out of their primes, especially Shaq, who was overweight and fat. Let's just be real. Shaq was not in good shape whatsoever. And also, when you consider the fact that LeBron James from 2006 to 2010 was never the highest paid player on the roster, as in 2006, Larry Hughes was making more. 2007, Ben Wallace. 2008, Ben Wallace was still making more. 2009, he was still making more. And in 2010, Shaq. So it's pretty obvious that LeBron James gave them cap flexibility as well, and they still couldn't take care of it. They still couldn't get him players. They still couldn't trade for any players. They basically just could not build anything around LeBron James. I mean, it really gets to the point where LeBron James has to look at the organization and say, hey, if they're not putting talent around me, I might as well go to a team that can do it, or do it myself like he did in Miami. Now, I do know people are going to always comment and say, but he spent 4 years in Miami and he only got 2 championships, because he did underachieve in 2011, obviously, and in 2014 he didn't show up for some of those fourth quarters, and I understand that. But let's just be honest here. I know you might want to say Miami's a great organization, great owner in Pat Riley. They had a nice young coach in Eric Spoelstra who had improved himself at the time, but now we know what he's made of. But let's just be real, okay? Everything that was made in Miami for those 4 years, that was made by the players. It was not made by Pat Riley. It was not made by Eric Spoelstra. It was not made by management. That was made by LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. I'm so sorry to everybody, but that's the truth. LeBron James and the Big Three, they made that. They were able to convince free agents to take less money. They were the ones who convinced players like Ray Allen to play the end of his years in Miami. Okay, it was not Pat Riley, it was not Eric Spoelstra. So now that we got those 4 years out the way, I mean, let's just look at everything else. He played in Cleveland. Cleveland, guys. I don't know how much I can really stretch that and emphasize that. He played in a bad market, a low market. I mean, let's just be real. No one wants to go to Cleveland. I don't know what the hell Chris Webber was talking about, saying he could have got them to go to Cleveland.
It's not the same.
LeBron went and helped.
LeBron went to the, yeah, I mean,
LeBron went and helped. He didn't get help. He could have recruited people to Cleveland.
It just seems like
If you think that Dwayne Wade was going to leave South Beach and Chris Bosh was going to leave Toronto to come to trash city of Cleveland,
You like it? You think Cleveland's cool? I mean, I never heard anybody say I'm going to Cleveland on vacation. I mean, what's so good about Cleveland?
you're out of your mind, guys. I mean, he played for a bad organization. He played for bad ownership and Dan Gilbert. Never really had a solid coach. I mean, he had Mike Brown, who's a great defensive-minded coach, but offensively, I think he really does lack in that area. I know he played for Eric Spoelstra, but let's just be honest here. Eric Spoelstra hadn't proven himself at that point in time, and he had great players, and it's hard to see if a coach is really great when all he's really played with is great players. Now, I understand at this point in time he's proven himself with the season that Miami had last season, but I mean, at that point in time, like I said, he hadn't proven himself. And also, when we look at the fact that he had David Blatt, Tyronn Lue, I mean, look, this list isn't that impressive of LeBron James coaches. Let's just face the facts here. And if we're reading some of the other coaches, it just gets worse here. I mean, LeBron James has never played with a great coach throughout his whole entire career. He's basically been the coach of every single team that he's been on. Let's just face reality here. Let's think about something here. LeBron James, like I stated, he has never really had help. Now, when I sit here and I say that, I know a lot of people are going to scream and lose their minds and say, how can you say he's never had help? He went to Miami and he formed a super team, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I understand that LeBron James has had great players to play with him, but when we talk about help, there's more to that. When we talk about players that are in the top 10 throughout NBA history, we have to look at not just the help that they had on the court, but the help that they had off the court. Tim Duncan had a good management to where they were able to get players late in rounds such as Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. Hell, even if you want to throw Kawhi, because he was actually a late first round pick, not extremely late because he was the 15th pick, but for someone of his talent and what he is today, he was drafted pretty late. And we all know that draft pick was acquired when the Pacers traded it to the San Antonio Spurs. Also, when you look at teams like Larry Bird, they were able to acquire players such as Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and that franchise is so storied, let's just be honest. And also, when you look at someone like Michael Jordan, this man retired and the Bulls were still in championship contention. LeBron James could retire for 2 to 3 years in the middle of that 7-year run that he had with Cleveland, and they would have went down the drain. And that shows for when he left and went to Miami and they couldn't do anything. That roster had Kyrie Irving and that's it. When you look at all the draft picks that Cleveland had, it was horrible. I mean, they had 3 first-round draft picks and 3 number 1 draft picks. They had Kyrie, they had Dion Waiters, who wasn't a number 1 pick, but he was actually in the top 5. And also, they had Anthony Bennett and they had Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins was traded. Anthony Bennett was a huge bust. And we all know Kyrie Irving, they literally could do nothing with Kyrie. So when you compare him to MJ, it's pretty obvious that the organization knew how to run things better than Cleveland. And we hadn't even talked about how they acquired Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen through trade. Also, how they got someone like Tony Kukoc. I mean, we're not even going to delve into that because we all know the Bulls were run to some good level of proficiency. And then when you look at players such as Kobe Bryant, who played for one of the most storied franchises in sports in the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, I understand that he did have to play with talent such as Kwame and Smush, but let's be real, they flipped that around pretty quick As for LeBron James, he played with talent like that for a whole 7 years, which is half of his career at this current point in time. 7 valuable years where he was putting up historic numbers and taking horrible teams whose second best player was Larry Hughes' inefficient self, and who only played 2 games in that final series. And not only did he take them to the finals, but he did that against a Detroit Pistons team that was great defensively, and he scored the last 25 points in game 5. We all know that LeBron James, when it came to dragging, he was that guy, for Cleveland at least. So we need to understand that LeBron James throughout his whole career, he was never given the opportunity that Kobe and MJ, and also when you throw in Larry Bird, Russell, Duncan, Magic was lucky not only to play for the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most storied franchises in NBA history, scratch that, sports history, and had a good market in Los Angeles, but he was drafted to a team that had the best player in the world in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So it's pretty safe to say that each and every one of these players on the top 10 list, besides LeBron James, never ever had to go through the situations of LeBron to where they were carrying trash teams for so long. I understand that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, there was a point in time where the Bucks weren't making the playoffs, but they turned that around quick when he went to LA, and he was drafted to play with one of the greatest point guards, scratch that, one of the greatest players in NBA history in Oscar Robertson. I understand he was at the tail end of his career, but he was able to put up good to great numbers at certain points of time in order to give them one last gasp to get a championship. So it's pretty obvious that if LeBron James was ever given an organization for his whole career to where he didn't have to worry about being the coach, he didn't have to worry about being the GM, he didn't have to worry about basically being the owner of his team, if he was put in a situation like that throughout his whole career, good market, all that stuff taken care of, and he didn't have such a horrible owner in Dan Gilbert, who knows if LeBron James would have been higher on the all-time list. Hell, who knows if he'd even be the GOAT.